Okay, so a ketogenic lifestyle or a ketogenic diet is basically high fat, moderate protein and low carbohydrates. And these numbers equate to this. About 70% of your calorie intake would be from saturated fats, good fats. 20% would be through proteins and 10% through carbohydrates. Good fats are beef, fattier cuts of beef, so not sirloin steak, so like rump steak with the fat going through it. Fish for fish oils, good wholesome saturated fat. Cheese, butter, olive oil, avocados, eggs, coconut oil. These are all examples of high saturated fat foods. Added to that, all the research that's being done, we now know that the cause of cellular inflammation is refined sugar and carbohydrates. So if this is a healthy cell, if you think about your arm, if it was to become inflamed, it might be cut or it might be hot to touch, swollen, sore. That happens with your cells too when you eat these foods. And what happens is little tears form in the cell whenever you eat these foods, sugars and carbs. And what happens is your body reacts to that and sends cholesterol to these areas as a defense mechanism. So the cholesterol forms like a bandage to mend the cell again. But over time, if you were to continue eating the refined carbohydrates and sugars, you would get a lot of these tears, and so cholesterol would form in the cell, which, when you look at it, forms atherosclerosis or hardening of the arteries, narrowing of the arteries, and it looks like it's because of the cholesterol, when in fact it's not. It's the sugars and the carbohydrates that are causing the problems. Now we know, because we've researched this, that the sugars and the carbohydrates are causing cellular tears or lesions, but in the bigger scheme of things, they're actually leading to obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and lots and lots of mood disorders and brain issues. So where I showed you the cell and the cell narrowing, you can get plaquing of the brain as well, which is exactly the same thing but in your brain, and it leads to Alzheimer's and mood disorders and lots of brain related issues. So we have to stop the carbs and we'll have to stop the refined sugar. And when I say carbs, I mean the pastas, rice, crackers, waffles, biscuits, sweeties, that sort of stuff. So when we make the switch from sugar and we stop functioning on sugar, we cut that out and we switch to high saturated fat or a ketogenic style of diet. So we switch to the fat. What do we find? We find that your energy is, you have so much more energy, because remember, there's more than double the amount of calories in fat, but your insulin comes down. Now insulin, as we know, is the biggest fat storage hormone known to man. So if you've got too much insulin, chances are you've got a belly, and you won't get rid of the belly until we fix your insulin or your insulin resistance, which you've probably got if you put your hand on your belly and it's wobbly, there's body fat there. So we're fixing your insulin resistance because we've switched over from sugars to fats, and your insulin's coming down, your energy's going up. When you combine a ketogenic style lifestyle or diet with intermittent fasting, the results are absolutely amazing. I have mums who have full-time jobs and families and husbands who make the switch, and they start seeing their abdominals after years and years and years of them being hidden under layers of fat. They start seeing their arm shape, their mental clarity is much better, their concentration is better, they just feel completely different as a person, and it's because you're changing at cellular level how you actually function and who you are as a human being. You've changed it, you've made the switch. How do we know then if you've made the switch? If you've made it effectively, you will be burning, you'll be using ketones as energy. You get pea sticks that you can pee on, and you'll see the colour of the pea stick, and it'll be kind of like from a really, really light pink to a dark purple. Dark purple is when you're in ketosis. But because ketosis is common. If you were to go to bed at say 9 o'clock at night and you were to sleep till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock the next morning, chances are you'd be in ketosis, okay? What we're aiming for is for you to become fully fat adapted, this one here. So you'll undergo a period and a process of fat adaptation. Now sometimes that takes up to 3 weeks for people. Depends on what your diet was like before you started keto and how strict you're being. If you cheat on keto, it doesn't work. Okay, you take yourself out of ketosis and raise your insulin levels, it kicks you out of ketosis and it takes a while to get back in again. But if you do it, you will be over the moon with the results. So how could we become fat adapted? And how do we speed up the process? Here's a few things here that we can do. Apple cider vinegar will help ketosis, so make sure you get apple cider vinegar with the mother, organic, and have a capful of that a couple of times a day. Potassium, we have to make sure your potassium levels are high enough that you're not going to go through a period of keto flu, we can call it. It's when you feel really, really crap, your energy's dropped, you feel flat, but basically because you've stopped